There are moments that you always remember. Some of them are so common that they are almost ubiquitous. The first kiss, the first love, the loss of virginity. There are others that are a little less common, but not much. A wedding day, the birth of children. There are also more rare experiences, a bungee jump, say, or when some rich asshole offers you $500,000 to spend the night with your wife. I'm sorry, what did you just say? Must have heard wrong. Simon Richards chuckled, amused at my confusion. The multimillionaire was about 40, but could easily pass for a 30-year-old. Tall, fit, tanned, and impeccably handsome. The only interesting feature of his face, the only flaw that gave him even a hint of character, was a small scar under his lip. A well-dressed man. Even his shorts, t-shirt, and Hawaiian shirt seemed tailored. Richards is one of those quiet, reclusive types of rich people who shun the spotlight. Dangerous. I said, Adam, that I would like your wife to spend the night with me. In exchange, I'll pay $500,000, half to her and half to you. I promise she will have a great time and you will be taken care of. He gestured to the woman next to me where my wife should be, an exotic beauty named Grace. I assure you, Grace will make the time fly by very quickly. In fact, once you've tasted its delights, you'll probably even want to extend it for another day or so. Sitting next to him, too close at that, was Irene, my wife of 9 years. She is a beautiful woman with hazel eyes and golden blonde hair. Moreover, she is slender, but, to be honest, not comparable to Grace. If I saw both women at a bar, I would probably hook up with Grace and then try to pick up Erin. I assess my chances realistically. There is nothing special in my appearance, although I am in fairly good shape. We were here in the first place because of Erin. She is the executive assistant to the CEO of a small firm that Richards acquired. Once the deal was done, she, along with her boss and several other senior officials working on it, were invited to Richards' private island. According to Erin, in order for an employee to come, his or her spouse must be present. But I noticed quite early on that for some reason, several wives did not receive this notice. I quickly noticed how passionate she was about Richards. We didn't know each other before our arrival, but as soon as we were on the island, he took the entire delegation on an excursion. However, it was clear to anyone with any sense that he was giving the tour solely for her, and the rest of us were simply following along. During the tour, Erin made no effort to stay close to me, but after we were shown to our bungalow, she spent several hours sucking the juices out of me before we went out to dinner together. After a wonderful evening of dinner and dancing, we returned to our cabin to try the usually forbidden types of sex that she gave me on special occasions. I should have been wary then. The next morning, she told me about the different excursions I could go on: scuba diving, snorkeling, parasailing, and more. I asked if she wanted to go too, but she just laughed, kissed me lovingly, and said she just wanted to work on her tan. I always wanted to try scuba diving, so I went there in the morning. When I returned around noon, one of Richards's assistants said that we were invited to lunch with him and that Erin was already there. And she was there, already close enough to touch. The heads were so close that a slight shift of one or the other could destroy me. To her very little credit, she jumped away from him slightly as I walked in, and he stood up to greet me warmly. I growled, "I think this is my chair, Mr. Richards?" He just grinned, an annoyingly bossy grin, as he sat down again. "Ah, but our drinks are already here. There's no point in changing seats, Adam. Plus, you will find that Grace will be a wonderful companion." She nodded politely at me, a smile forming on her lips. I almost left. Something went wrong. This is some kind of ambush. I'm a reporter and grew up in a bad neighborhood. The locality and the caresses of my wife the night before had dulled my senses, but now I was keen again. Erin's boss, Mr. Elgin, was also there, as was his wife. A blue blood couple hanging out with Bluebeard. More importantly, 2 of Richards's security guards were here. Of the 2, my instincts told me I should be more wary of the first. The latter moved after me, almost blocking my exit. I sat down reluctantly. So far, nothing had happened that we couldn't overcome, I hoped. Erin had always been dazzled by the rich and famous. Unlike me, she grew up upper middle class, in that razor-thin border between comfort and true wealth. Her parents were always disappointed that she married me, and lately I began to think that she felt the same. I looked at the crowd that had gathered and decided that the best option was to just get this shit over with. What's the matter? It was then that he made his proposal, the very thing that ruined my life, and decided his fate. At first I was stunned and unable to speak, but I was always a quick thinker. I came to my senses faster than I think any of them expected, quickly going on the offensive. "Erin, what the hell is he talking about?" She could hardly look at me. I enjoyed his company. Her gaze returned to me, and a slight panic appeared on her face. "Only communication. We talked and had dinner together, all together. It was just him and me who had lunch once or twice when Mr. Elgin was suddenly called away. Smart or not, I could not hide the mistrust and resentment in my voice. Did you plan this? It's not... He didn't just approach you about it when we got here?" "No." She fell silent. "He said it would be an adventure and that you would be well taken care of. Dear, I turned 30 this year and you are 31. We'll start trying to have kids soon. I love you, but this could be our last real adventure, our last crazy adventure in the bedroom." Yes, exactly the last one. I couldn't look at her. "No, please, do not be like that. How amazing Grace is, and if... I only spend one night with him, I promise. But if you want to spend a whole week with her, then fine. I know I set a trap for you, but I knew that..." I exploded. "Yes, you knew. Knew I wouldn't agree to this, so I waited until I was trapped here to bring it up." I looked at Richards. "Fuck you, Robert Redford. No bones. I do not play. My vows actually mean something to me." His face was calm. "That's why I'm offering you $500,000, Adam. Think about it. You can write your own ticket. Pay off the mortgage on your house, all your debts, start working on that novel Erin told me you've always wanted to write. A detective story," she said. "I've always loved the old Christie novels, but what about..." "Fuck you, you damn sociopath. I won't compare literary influences with you." He shrugged. "As you wish. I don't mean any hard feelings about this, and I understand that you're upset, but think about the benefits beyond the money. I assure you, Grace is an exquisite lover, and Richards tried to portray a disarming smile. "He was lucky I didn't have a weapon because I happily used it on him. Well, I don't want to brag, but when you get Erin back, I'm sure you'll find that she's a much improved lover. And if you combine that with the love that you two have, with the connection that..." He stroked her cheek, and I almost rushed across the table to him. "I wish I was lucky enough to have you. You will be very happy together until the end of your days. Erin, if you don't want a divorce, you will get up and leave here with me right now." It could still happen. This damn Erin. "I don't know what the hell you're thinking about right now, but I'm giving you a chance to at least try to stay with me." I begged, and I knew it. I knew from the look on her face that I might as well be talking to a rock. My wife put her hand on Richard's hand. "Adam, please. Everything will be fine. Just one night and then we'll have our whole lives. If..." She flashed a mischievous smile that made me want to puke. "If you want, I could join you and Grace for the rest of the week after tonight. She can show me the best ways to please you. I will devote my whole life to this, my love." I growled. "Do not call me that. There's no love here." Erin's face became stern with a slight hint of sadness. "Okay." She stood up, and Richard stood up with her. "This will happen. It's too good an opportunity, financially speaking, to simply pass up. I'm sorry you're upset about this. I was completely serious when I said all this. I love you, and I want you to have a good time with Grace, and I would like to learn everything I can from her. I'll be everything you ever wanted, Adam." "You are already like that. Please don't do this." She sighed sadly and turned to leave. I was standing, but then I heard a kid approach me from behind. "Sir, I will have to ask you to stay here." At that moment, Grace put her hand on mine, but I pulled away. Shrugging, she folded her arms over her chest. I figured she would get paid no matter what happened, and then they were gone. Whippet following behind in case Tiny somehow couldn't stop me. But I wasn't going to get into a fight over her. It's amazing how quickly love can turn into hate. Aaron's boss said, "Adam, I understand that you are upset, but you'll be well compensated, and I'll make sure Aaron is promoted to a management position. Everyone can win here if you say one more word, I'll break your fucking neck. He won't get to me before I get to you, if he even cares." There was no movement behind me, which confirmed my assessment. The rich bastard blushed several shades of red before finally closing his mouth and leaving with his wife. I looked at the girl next to me. "Why are you still here?" "You'll see." As I turned to leave, Tiny blocked my path. "I can't let you go, dude." "Sorry. I don't give a damn about her now. My wife is cheating on me with your boss, and she is dead to me. I'm just leaving." He shook his head. "It makes no sense. Nothing will leave here until tomorrow anyway." And he bowed his head conspiratorially. "Listen, everything is not as it seems. I shouldn't say anything, but you look solid. Just give me half an hour, okay? Then I'll help you get ready myself." Everything is not as it seems. He pretended to purse his lips, and I realized that I wouldn't get anything more from him. To hell. There's booze and steak. I probably would have vomited within an hour once this all hit me. But if you grew up poor, you know not to miss out on food when you can avoid it. And, in accordance with his words, after half an hour, everything really began to clear up. "Ah, Adam. I decided not to use Grace's services." Richards returned to the room, a knowing smile on his face. Okay. Fair, man. I appreciate it. Have you finished yet?" "Something fast." Grace stood up and walked over to Richards, hanging onto him and kissing his neck. He chuckled and pushed her away. When she left the room, he sat down opposite me. "For obvious reasons, you are very angry with me now. I don't blame you at all. But if it helps, I haven't slept with your wife and I won't." "What?" In a tone that implied I was an idiot, he said, "Adam, I have women like Grace. Right now, 2 more like her are waiting for me in my room. I'm not interested in... Well, I don't mean to be rude. Erin does seem like a wonderful woman physically, but sexually I'm afraid she's a little corny for me." Part of me wanted to protect my wife, a reaction that seemed stupid even then. The other wanted to flatten this smug son of a bitch for being so unbearable and try her luck with Tiny. But the third part could only stare and ask again. "What?" One thing I've learned as a reporter is that people love to tell their stories. If you get them, they will tell you their whole lives. So I let him talk. "I know what you felt half an hour ago because I was where you are now. I was younger than you, only 25. Married for a couple of years to his college sweetheart, he was a rising star, a prodigy at the financial firm where he worked. My company was bought, just like your wife's, and one of the new owners took a liking to my Lori. He invited us, me, my bosses, and Lori, to his private island. As I was told, other spouses would also be there, but it was a setup. The new owner and management overpowered Lori by telling her that my place in the firm would be guaranteed, that I would be given a huge raise and promotion, and that I would receive a bonus in the amount of $200,000, but he shrugged. Inflation. More than 20 years ago. Other times. Richards chuckled. She succumbed to their persuasion. I, of course, was sent away while the bastard pampered and pampered her, first in planning meetings, and then at the golf club or yacht with my bosses. I could hardly refuse, and although I wanted to take Lori with me, I was told that there must be some kind of boys' club there. When I returned from the yacht trip on the 3rd evening, they were sitting together, as were Aaron and me. I was told that she accepted the offer. My wife tried to tell me that this was for our sake, for my sake. The new owner forced a couple of escorts on me, and Lori told me, well, a lot of what Aaron told you. He shrugged his shoulders. I protested, but she agreed and my marriage broke up. He clenched his fingers. I realized that this is a fairly common game among very rich people. The script rarely undergoes major changes, just minor variations here and there. More often than not, the husband and wife come to terms with, or at least make peace with, what is happening. Both live a week in debauchery and move on as best they can. Or the husband, an honest person like you or me, decides that he cannot come to terms with his wife's betrayal. Sometimes a wife is used roughly and she hates it. Sometimes she is used roughly and she likes it. I have heard once or twice of a rich man falling in love with a wife, or of a rich woman wooing a wife or husband. It's about the drama, not the outcome. Once a certain level of wealth is reached, money becomes just a way to keep score, and the new desire becomes to obtain intangible goods, such as love, fidelity, or a future. Richards poured himself a glass of whiskey, then gestured to me with the bottle. I ignored him, and he shrugged. I've always tried to be a disruptor, Mr. Baker, even before that term came into vogue. This is how I made money, both before and after leaving the company that destroyed my marriage. I understood the intricacies of day trading before most people knew about its existence. I understood how it can quickly make a fortune, how to use leverage, when to enter and exit the market, when bubbles inflate and burst. He waved his free hand vaguely. This island? The same island where my marriage ended. I destroyed the man who seduced my wife, driven him to bankruptcy and suicide, along with all the other old money fools who collaborated with him. This island has seen the end of many marriages, often through my fault. But what they did out of cruelty, I do as a kind of charity. I tried to destroy this game, turn it to good purposes. They looked for women who seemed incorruptible and corrupted them. I'm looking for women in need, greedy, women who look at their life as one in which they should be happy and still hunger for more. Some people take some convincing, but with Aaron, to be honest, I didn't put in much effort. I clenched my teeth. Sorry, I know it seems offensive, but it shouldn't be offensive, it's just the truth. But I did you a favor, Adam, whether you see it now or not. In the end, she would have left you for the first man from her company who decided that she was worthy of becoming a trophy wife. I've done this dozens of times, and every company has an Aaron like that. Sometimes even several. Richard sighed. I know this is a cruel consolation, but you are young. I left my marriage when I discovered that my wife was like yours. Once my head was back in place, along with the desire to destroy the men who did this to me, I wanted to help the men who were unknowingly trapped in marriages that were ticking time bombs. I also wanted to reward virtue, Adam. When I started playing my version of the game, I became convinced that this was its main principle. If both spouses accepted my offer, they were paid exactly what was described, and I believe they still separated after a few years because they both had that greedy spark in them that would make any amount of money not enough. If the wife leaves but the husband does not, it almost always means divorce. Considering that I have never spent the night with my wife on such occasions, and the fact that this is a purely verbal agreement on an island of dubious territorial affiliation, he waved his hand dismissively. Well, you understand, there is no way to ensure its implementation, in fact. That's why I give all the money to my husband. Of course, after a divorce, to avoid confiscation, the wife will receive a consolation prize in the form of a small bonus, a promotion, and an increase in salary to keep her quiet. But no, she will not receive the large payment that she was counting on. He grinned. By the way, you passed the test and will receive the money. If you want to go and have fun with Grace, or heck, blow off some steam with Grace, Charity, and Faith together in my room, you're welcome. Sort of like a victory lap, if you like. My face showed my rage. No, I understand it's too early. Well, the offer stands as long as you're here. Do you have any questions? I had them. A lot of. But I also already had an idea of what and how I would do. I'm part of a dying breed of investigative reporters, and I want to do my own research without giving myself away. I decided to ask him only those questions that he alone could answer. Trying to control myself, I asked, "Where is Erin?" "Oh." He winced slightly. "She's now with Duncan. a member of my security team, who left with us. I told her that I sometimes prefer to watch for a while from my office before joining in, and Duncan has a certain rugged charm that many women find irresistible. He spread his arms. As I already said, Adam, it only takes the slightest effort. The expression on his face was disgusting. That bastard expected me to be grateful to him. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and let it out. When I opened them again, everything became clear to me. What would you do if the husband agreed, but the wife changed her mind? Or if none of them agreed? Richard shrugged. The first never arose, and the second, he looked to the side. Only once. I was generous to both of them. They named their first child after me. But that was at the very beginning, and this is the only time I made a bad choice. How soon can I leave? He shrugged. If you want, then this evening. I can have a helicopter pick you up. But I beg you, Adam, there are so many pleasures on this island, and not only carnal. I understand your reluctance, although I urge you to reconsider. But there is also... No, I'd like to check out. Keep her here as long as she wants. I stood up and looked at Tiny. Can you help me pack my things? The baby's name was Tree. Overall a decent guy, even if he works for a shitty boss doing shitty things. He was true to his word, helped me pack and sympathized with me while we did it, and then carried the suitcases to the helipad. Sorry, bro, he does it, and... Trey shrugged. I've never seen him make a mistake. It sucks, but after the divorce, he will provide for you for life. I've seen him give people much more than $500,000. But you didn't hear this from me. I knew how people of Richard's caliber operated. He had almost certainly already studied me and knew my background. I worked in the criminal and financial sectors and realized early on that there was much more evil going on in the latter. If I tried to speak publicly, it would be my word against his, even with the recording I had been making from the moment I entered the cafeteria. At best, I will be accused of slander, perhaps blacklisted, and perhaps silenced in more serious ways. The simple answer would be to suck it up, lick your wounds, and get the money. Perhaps he is right. Perhaps Erin would always have been corrupted. She was already corrupted. Doesn't matter. This may be what I end up doing, but I was patient and willing to weigh my options. No, that's not true. I wanted revenge. But first I need to understand if this is even possible. When Erin finally returned home, everything was terrible. Very, very ugly. She felt betrayed, if that was possible to believe. Betrayed by Richards because she couldn't have fun with him or get money. Betrayed by me because I abandoned her. She continued to shout that we could pay off all our debts, that I was selfish and short-sighted, that I was a prude and a weakling. I looked at her silently and tried to understand how I could love her all these years. Has she always been like this? Reluctantly, I had to admit that there was some truth in what Richard said. She and I were from different worlds. She wanted to be one of the rich and famous, while I wanted to bring them down to earth. The only thing that kept us together was our love for each other. But a year ago, even 6 months, I would have thought that we would be together forever. The divorce was even uglier. What should have been a simple division of property between two people with the same income turned into a fight for money. I angered Elgin when I threatened him, and he was willing to pay his own money to see me suffer. I lost not only my wife, but also almost all of our shared financial assets. I lost everything because of Richards's performance. Between the helicopter ride and the divorce, my only hobby was studying Simon Richards and this sick game. The one he claimed was common among rich people. The one he said he wanted to destroy. I found patterns in the way he played, the people whose lives he played with, how he paid out the money, researched his early life, his ex-wife, the companies he owned, his employees, everything I could. And then I planned. I practiced the skills I would need, and I was getting ready. My apartment was a shoebox in one of the worst areas of my city. That's all I could afford. I don't have close friends. Our friends were Erin's friends. No personal life, no hope except that Richard stays true to his template, and he stayed. A month after the divorce, I was sitting at the kitchen table of a small, miserable two-room apartment, turning over the plan in my head for the 1,000th time, prepared for the necessary sacrifices. I didn't drink or touch alcohol for weeks. I must be fully prepared. And I was. There's a knock on the door. Looking through the keyhole. A minute to calm down, get into character. Man. Richard's manner was gleeful. A Santa Claus with a pencil mustache and a skewed sense of good and bad. Behind him is only Trey. Thank God Duncan is not there. Otherwise, everything would have gone completely differently. Simon. I mirrored his excitement, but mine was caused by a completely different reason. When he extended his hand, I shook it vigorously. Then I pulled him towards me, and my forehead hit his nose, breaking it. My knee hit him in the groin once and twice, knocking him to the ground as I stepped back and pulled the gun from behind my back. It was aimed at Trey, who was a little late to get his. No need. The big man froze. I was sure this wasn't the first time someone had pointed a gun at him. I knew where he grew up and what he did with his life. Figured that he would be smart enough to realize that his best chance at the moment was to stall for time. Drop it. To the apartment. Hold it by the trunk. I have no complaints about you. He nodded, following my instructions. The weapon skidded and bounced into place somewhere behind me. I stepped back. Pick him up and bring him inside. Trey easily pulled his boss to his feet and helped him into the apartment while the parasite groaned in pain. Take off your clothes, both, down to underwear. They hesitated. Then Simon said, "What is wrong with you? I was going to make you rich. Take off your clothes, or this conversation will become much shorter and much bloodier." They did as they were told. Simon moved slowly because he was in pain. Trey was slow because he was looking for an opportunity. Secure your ankles, and threw him the handcuffs. His expression remained neutral as he did this. He was a professional, and he knew that he could survive only by remaining calm. With my free hand, I pointed to the kitchen chair. Strap your boss's legs and right arm on this chair. Handcuff the left one to him. Then handcuff yourself to the radiator. I could see the wheels turning in his brain. As soon as he is immobilized, he will be completely in my power. I only have a .22 caliber pistol. So what's better? Agree with me or attack me in the hope that I'm a bad shot, that I won't hit anything vital before he takes me down. Sighing, I said, "Trey, I like you. You are the only one who treated me decently in this whole story. Do what I say, don't set me up, and I promise that no matter what happens, you will get out of here on your own, and completely unharmed." He still hesitated. It's a .22 gauge with a silencer. Do you think I went through all the difficulties of choosing the right weapon without further training? I fired a couple of thousand suppressed rounds in the last 2 months, exactly from this. The betrayed look on Richard's face was almost worth all the trouble. He took this man, this poor black man, and gave him a job. Raised from the dirt and blah, blah, blah. I could almost hear the internal monologue, the one that could end with the words, "People just don't want to work anymore." Once both of my guests were in the right places, I took out the armored case containing the laptop that Tree had. Code? No. Richards looked like a capricious child. Trey. Code? He remained silent. Dude, you're going to get fired no matter what. You have nothing to lose except your life. So far, you've been smart enough not to give me problems, which is more than your boss can say. Code 790235. The case opened immediately. 3, Tiny shrugged. It's his show, Mr. Richards. Just do what he says. You must listen to him. This is the only thing that will help you survive. He grinned. You won't shoot at us. If you do this, the cops will be here in a few minutes. I laughed, loudly and enthusiastically. I had to wipe away a tear. Hey, Trey, you grew up in Cabrini Green, right? Trey was clearly surprised, but, to his credit, he didn't flinch. This area isn't that bad, but what do you think the reaction time is to a couple of shots? Nobody will come, sir. Richards stared at him, unconvinced. Nonsense. Even in a place like... I fired 2 bullets, just to the side of his head, causing him to scream piercingly. The sound of the gunshot wasn't the metal mouse fart of a Hollywood movie, but the sound of a suppressed .22 firing subsonic rounds isn't much different from a door slamming. The bullets also wouldn't penetrate the thin walls of my apartment. As I said, I had plenty of time to plan. Listen to Trey, Simon. If you survive this, it will be only because you will listen to him and do what I say. The demonstration ended. The weapon lay on the table, out of reach of the bound millionaire. He was slightly deflated, but still had that smug aura of superiority surrounding him. We need to fix this, but first I'll let him cook. I've been in this situation for a year now. It seemed fair. Trey, would you like a drink? I stood up, leaving the gun almost within Richard's reach. Far enough that he couldn't reach it, but close enough that he couldn't help but try. I laughed as I heard his handcuffs jingle as I turned my back. Do I have beer, water, or soda? Beer will be fine. I pulled out a couple of bottles and poured them into a disposable plastic cup, not intending to give him a weapon. He took it from me with an air of disapproving respect. Sitting back down opposite the seething benefactor, I took a sip. He grinned. What do you want? I shrugged and said, money, humiliation, maybe if you piss me off enough, blood. Another sip. But first I want to give you something. Richard spat. What? Enlightenment. See, I think you actually believe in your own mission. Let's figure this out. He rolled his eyes. Oh, please. I know people like you, Adam. Growing up poor, fighting for everything you have, and someone more powerful than you took it all away. This is the way of the world. But I was going to give you much more than you had before, more than you could dream of. I would give you money that would destroy her if you wanted. But you needed... I raised the gun again and pointed it at him. You ruined my life, Simon. I poked him in the forehead with the tip of the muffler to emphasize every word. You destroyed mine life. Because of your game, I no longer have anything that matters to me. His eyes widened in fear. For the first time, he truly felt how close he was to his death. I changed my mind, Adam. You are a strong person, a planner like me. You can change too. The gun lay back on the table because I was laughing so hard that I was afraid I would accidentally pull the trigger. You are an arrogant bastard. You don't... I shook my head in bewilderment. Your wife left you, but you were only together for 4 years. My shoes are older. Because of you, I lost 11 years of my life. You play this game without understanding the stakes because you've never had to pay anything but money. I leaned back in my chair. Do you know how many lives you have ruined? I'm not talking about the 8-year-old children working in your sweatshop in Jakarta, or the slaves working for your subcontractors in Yemen, and not even about those whose factories you closed and moved abroad in order to squeeze out a tiny additional profit. I'm just talking about the people whose lives you ruined with this stupid... He growled. Cheaters don't matter. They decided their own fate. They are still people. They matter, even if they made bad choices. As for their choice, we'll come back to that. But quantity, Simon. I interviewed as many of these people as I could. He opened his mouth. Yes, your non-disclosure. Nobody cares about it. You destroyed them too, and they hate you. Almost everyone chose to talk to me when they found out I was part of that unlucky league you dragged us into. It was easy enough to figure out who they were. You boasted so proudly about how often you did this that every company you bought had a woman like Erin. I just needed to understand the diagram, and it was easy enough to understand. I asked husbands and, when I could, wives, all without protocol. People love to talk, Simon. If you let them talk, they will tell you their whole life, especially if you tell them that you will make the person who hurt them pay. I usually don't smoke in my apartment, only on the fire escape, but this is my last night here, no matter what. So I decided to make an exception. Trey, do you smoke? He shook his head. I took a deep breath and exhaled right into this asshole's face. Quantity, exactly. Of course, there are many ways to measure the number of lives destroyed. I know you businessmen love your own measurements. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it, right? I'll be as nice to you as I can and give you the lowest number I can. Any guess? Without taking into account cheaters, as you so eloquently put it. So, how much? He was silent, pouted again. Come on, you can guess, you must be smart. Still silent. I put my hand on the gun and said with a threat in my voice, guess, 30. I raised an eyebrow. Wow! Not a bad guess. His smug superiority returned for a second. However, it is stunningly wrong. 137. You have destroyed at least 137 lives, Simon. And if you consider the consequences, then thousands. Nonsense, he spat. My laughter seemed to anger him even more. For a financier, you really aren't very good with numbers. Let's count on a napkin. 20 years, on average, 4 times a year. That's 80 marriages, give or take. Almost every one of these husbands believes that you have ruined their lives, took something away from them, one of those intangible assets that you and other rich bastards like you play for. Their pride, self-respect, love, family, whatever. About half of them had children. Some had parents living with them who depended on them, and then suddenly the money to support them disappeared, eaten up by second rent, alimony and child support. Authors. I waved my hand. Well, you get the idea. Even if we limit ourselves to only husbands and direct dependents, and I am as generous as I can be with you, then the figure will be 137. I gave them millions, gave me the opportunity to advance, to build my life on something worthwhile. Richards fell silent as I touched the gun again and spoke, my voice low and menacing. My life was worth it. My marriage was worthwhile. Even if a miracle happens, even if I can somehow forgive my wife and she can pull her head out of her ass and we get back together, there will always be that crack. The crack you created. I rubbed my face and took another drag, releasing a ring of smoke. But it's not just me. Don't get me wrong. The fact that you are tied up and on the verge of meeting your creator, it's because you hit me specifically, but... I chuckled. If you hadn't ruined so many lives, I wouldn't have been able to do this. Another sip of beer to give him time to process what was said. Do you remember Doug Sanders? His eyes said that the name was familiar, but not familiar enough. And I guess after a while they all merged together, right? He is the 14th husband you have done this to. Good guy. Previously, he was an airline pilot. Now I see you remember him a little better. It's easier to remember how useful they can be than who they are, right? So, he took the seed money you gave him and started a charter airline. She's a decent size now. Good boss. He got married again and lives a happy life. And he fucking hates you. I laughed at the expression on his face. Damn, I thought I could hold a grudge, but Doug, if it weren't for the fact that he had children, he probably would have killed you within a week of your return from the island. But he had to accept it. During the divorce, his wife cleaned him out, tried to keep the children away. Well, you know how it happens. Your whole game depends on it, doesn't it? Because people react poorly to what they learn about each other. Otherwise, it wouldn't be interesting, right? Briefly speaking, he took your money, signed a non-disclosure agreement, and bided his time. And he was one of the first people I talked to. And once he saw that we were on the same page about you, I got, a corporate sponsor, I think. Free air travel makes everything so much easier. For starters, it is much easier to collect information, make connections, find other resources. What ingratitude! I arranged his new life. Shut up! Richards opened his mouth again, and I slapped him on the back of the head. I'll let you know when I want to hear from you. He flashed his eyes at me, impotent rage burning in them. So, 137, as I already said, but the number increases significantly when all consequences are taken into account. Women, of course. Grandparents who no longer see their children. Families broken by your little game. Their relatives who were divided between a wife for the sake of money and a husband for the sake of an oath. Moms and dads living with the fact of their daughter's suicide. Siblings watching their siblings slide into alcoholism or drug addiction. The list goes on and on. Even some of those who sold their companies to you hated you for forcing them to do so. I found many allies on this list. The gunsmith, I waved my pistol. The middle managers who worked in your corporations. People, there are many of them. A security consultant who could analyze your movements and your personnel. Professional criminals who could advise on, well, a range of issues. I'm sure you and your dumb techie friends would call it donation funding, since you can only think of everything in financial terms, about how you can make money from other people's ideas. But Aaron always said I had the soul of an angry old hippie, and I like to think of it as a grassroots political action. I opened his banking website. Do you know how easy it was to install a keyboard interceptor on your regular computer? No, probably not. I typed a few words. And of course, it was enough just to talk to people and find out how much you paid them. Once you even paid out $5 million. $5 million? Wow, that's actually generous. Of course, because of what happened to mom and dad, their teenage daughter had to be placed in a mental hospital. I think even sociopaths can feel a little guilty, right? Richard stirred in his chair, but not enough to stop, right? I looked at him, not at the screen. I asked, "Is that right? This is your cue to speak up, asshole." "Miscalculation." Laughing again, I said, "Miscalculation? Indeed?" His expression was somewhere between sad and calculating. If it had only been the former, I might have felt a tiny pang of sympathy. But seeing him trying to play with me even now? Nope. Yes. As I already said, since that unfortunate incident, I make sure to inquire about the woman's family before extending an invitation. Having made this minor concession, he tried to gather his strength. I was truly sorry for that girl, but her mother could have... Yes, about those women you invited. You said that there are such people in every company. Several, actually. Have you ever thought it's weird that almost all of them look like your ex? He froze for a moment, then tried again to put on his disarming smile. It hadn't worked before, and especially not now that his nose was bleeding. I have a type, Adam. I admit it. Only you don't have it. Not really. Your escorts are nothing like your wife, and the women you choose have changed for some time after you tried dating in the early days. After Patricia Tam, the next 3 invitations were sent to slender Asian women. And tall, dark-haired women with angular features seemed to be favorites for a year after you dated that actress. He said nothing. It was never about charity, it was always because you're a misogynist who can't handle being rejected. He exploded. We are talking about the highest good. In the face of his fury, my voice remained emotionless. Then why didn't you just offer counseling? What? $500,000 for your little bet. It is enough that all but the most financially secure should at least consider this offer, and even if they decide to refuse it. That was your first mistake, wasn't it? The husband and wife who didn't come to your game was because neither of them was desperate enough for the money. His sullen silence meant agreement. I already knew this, but the confirmation that my information was accurate made me happy. Add here a few $100,000 more for time off for employees, travel allowances, food, and other nonsense, and you will be closer to $1 million. How many therapy sessions could you buy? You could play your little game to save one person from a bad marriage and destroy his family, or you could help dozens of families stay together. And which did you choose? It was never about the greater good, Simon. It was always connected to your sick need to punish women who reminded you of your exes. I let him calm down a little while I drained money from his accounts. Stop looking like someone ran over your dog. I don't have enough time to liquidate all your assets. When I'm done, you'll still be filthy rich. Maybe also a little smarter. Richards burst out laughing bitterly. So much effort, and you are just a common thief. Trey winced. I pushed the laptop away. So that's what you think, Simon? That I'm doing this just to rob you? Trying to destroy your business, like you destroyed the business of the man who took yours, drive you to suicide? He hesitated for a moment, then bravado took over again. Of course, yes. and you won't get away with it. I will track you down in a few days and the money will be returned. No, they will not. The money is converted into cryptocurrency and then anonymously distributed to charities, shelters for battered women, charities that counsel low-income spouses, drug treatment clinics, and so on. People who help those you hurt. I can't undo the damage you've done, but I can help them help others. This is a greater good, Simon, than repeating the same stupid game that broke you, changing the rules slightly and labeling it charity. I took a drag from my cigarette. But that's what guys like you do, isn't it? They take an idea, change it beyond recognition to claim it as theirs, and then run with it. They write off all the costs they can. They settle cases out of court and impose non-proliferation agreements on the people affected by their greed. They disrupt the market by ignoring any licensing or safety advice, and then rely on public outcry and lawyers to get them out of any real trouble. Your useless, phony charity does nothing but add a vague sheen of respectability to your deeds. She won't fool anyone but the Simpsons' Richards, but they're the only one she has to fool, right? How much do you laugh at the men you help it? Richard shouted. I did a good deed. They needed to get out of their marriage. Cheaters must be punished. Then it was my turn to pause when something unpleasant dawned on me. You really believe this, don't you? He looked away. God, you're not just a sociopath, you're also an idiot. I leaned closer. Hey, Simon, want to know something funny? Very, very funny. He spat. What? You were right about Erin. I had a year to think about it, and if you had come to me and told me that she would behave this way, I probably would have believed you. Yes, I would try to take us to a psychologist, but this most likely would not help. Of all the women you've seduced, she was exactly who you thought she was. Richard's expression was one of pure bewilderment. Then why? Why are you doing it? Looking at the screen, I realized that everything went well. I raised my weapon and pointed it at him. His eyes widened in fear. Please do not. My eyes narrowed and my face contorted with rage. Only now did I let him see how much I hated him. Because she was mine, and you took her. My finger twitched, and the door slammed on Simon Richards' life. I've never killed people before, and I hope I never do again. But at that moment, my feelings for him were no more than for a poisonous snake that I had to put down. He was a vile, dangerous creature who did not deserve to live among decent people. Did taking his life make me less human? Has this left a stain on my soul? Maybe. But it's better to risk eternal reward than to live with the knowledge that I had the opportunity to make the world a better place but didn't. Getting up, I pulled out the flash drive from the laptop, then took something from the refrigerator. Trey watched in fear as I returned to him with a syringe filled with clear liquid. Listen, guy, I won't say anything. I tried to pretend to be calm. Relax, Trey. If I wanted to kill you, I would just use a gun. This is... I gestured to the needle. Just insurance for me and an alibi for you. Regular sedative. You'll be out for a few hours and well, you don't have to worry about that. It's better for you not to know. I handed over the flash drive. On it is a Bitcoin wallet worth about $1 million belonging to your former employer. When I'm safe, I'll contact you with the password. All you have to do is take your medicine, take a nap, and then tell the cops that you were ambushed before you even reached the door. Someone grabbed you from behind, pulled you inside, and that's the last thing you remember. The big man looked at me suspiciously. Why? I worked for him. Why would you let me go? I shrugged. As I already said, you were the only one on this island who treated me half decently. This in itself is not enough, but it was only the beginning. You tried to soften the blow when everyone else was trying to get at me, and you have children. That's what tips the scales. You are alive thanks to them, and you will receive money because you will no longer be hired for such work, while you must provide for it. He nodded slowly. Fine, fine. He shifted his hand as best he could, considering that he was handcuffed to the radiator. I was amused by the way he winced as the needle went inside. I don't envy the headache you'll have when you wake up, but for now, rest and dream about big women. Good night. Trey laughed quietly, dozing off. I smashed Richard's laptop with a hammer, dismantled my weapon, and left the apartment with these things and a small suitcase. He quickly reached the river, and the evidence went into the water. Another short trip to a private airfield, and I was off to a non-extradition country with a new identity. Why didn't you punish Erin? Her existence was her punishment. Richard's got her right. She will never be satisfied with what she has, only more. Between this desperate, greedy existence and the fact that the companies Richards acquired were inevitably depleted and closed, she would have enough failures in the next couple of years to last a lifetime. And I'm a nameless American on a beach with enough money to avoid answering questions. After some time, I found my love. Kwang provided me with a happy marriage and 3 beautiful children. I never doubted her loyalty or affection for me. This is, of course, better than living in a constant thirst for revenge. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.